All right, React Native learners, let's get on to our next section, the biggest and best yet, where we're going to be building the Chat Now app. And in fact, this app has so much in it that we couldn't fit it into one section. We split it into two for you so that we could cover a ton of great content. In this last app, we're going to be introducing some concepts that will allow us to build more serious applications. And even though the app that we're making today is smaller, you'll be equipped with the tools and the experience you need to scale to much larger apps. So let's find out what we're going to be looking at. The first thing that we're going to cover is the text input component in React Native, as well as some of the screens that we're going to need for our app. Also, we're going to be looking at some additional navigator functionality and some better usage patterns that will help us as we build larger and larger applications. We're also going to be covering the React Native linking API. And perhaps most critically, we're going to be introducing the Flux data flow paradigm and find out how we can use it in our apps. And then we're going to implement the Flux paradigm using the Redux library. So let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it. Diving right in this first section, we're going to be starting the Chat Now app. And what we're going to do is we're going to preview the final application to show you what it's going to look like and how it works. And then we're going to cover the first two screens and get you set up with the code that you need for that and bootstrap you out with that and look at some new styling properties as well. Finally, we're going to talk about the text input component, which is obviously a very critical component in almost any application. Let me start by showing you the app that we're going to build for our fictitious company, AwesomeCo. So AwesomeCo loves their customers and wants to make support really easy for them, so they want us to build a dedicated support chat app. A customer just opens it up, presses this big red Get Help button, and then they put in their name and account number, and they're immediately connected to a customer support rep. In our case, it will always be Alice, which is just a fake little support bot, but we'll be able to chat with her via our API. We've got a lot of ground to cover, so let's get started by creating our new application. As always, we initiate our new React Native project at the command line, and our app will be called the Chat Now app. So we'll just let that scaffold out, and then open it up. And just like we did in our last Be Briefed app, let's start by making a new component that will be cross-platform that we can show straight from our index file so that we can reduce repeated code across the two platforms, and we'll call it mainscreen.js for now. And because by now you're an expert in React Native, I won't walk you through writing all the code, but I will show you what it looks like and briefly explain it. So here's the code that we pasted in. It starts with the typical basic import statements for React Native at the top, and then we have our main screen class, which is pretty simple. It has a container view, and then it has two sections. It has one title container view, which has our AwesomeCo support title in it, and then it has our button right here. This is a button. We could extract that out into a separate component if we wanted to, but to keep things simple, we're just keeping it right here in the main root view. And it has a view with a touchable opacity so that we can press, and then the text inside that says Get Help. If we take a look at the styles down here, we have a bunch. We have our container, which sets up the size, the background color, and how we want to space our components. And then a title container, and title. Now, the interesting thing on this particular screen is the button container. So our button container is set to flex 2, so it takes up twice as much space as the title does. And then we have a button, which is a specific width and height. And we give it a border radius of half of our width and height, which makes it a circle. We give it a little bit of a border, and then we give it a little bit of shadow on iOS, which makes it appear 3D. And on Android, we give it an elevation of 5, which makes it lift off the page. Finally, we have our text down here at the bottom. And the one thing to note is that we're giving it a transparent background color. That's what that last 0 here means. And that makes our text be able to fit right in on top of that button. So now that you've furiously copied down all that code, or went to the code repository and copied it from there, let's swap out our index to use this new main component instead. We'll do that on both of our index files here. And now let's preview it in our simulator or our emulator. Nice. Now, when they tap this button, it needs to take them to a sign-in screen of sorts. So let's build that out now also. So we'll make another new component. We'll call it sign-in screen. I'm going to paste the code in and we'll walk through it. On our sign-in screen, it's a stateless component. And we have a containing view. And then inside the view, we have a label for my name and my account number. And then we have a simple button. Down here at the bottom, we have a link or a little bit of text that says forgot your account number. And we'll get to that in just a second. Our styles for this particular class have just the typical containers, some styling to change the text on it, and then some styling for the action button, which is that go button. And again, now that you've furiously copied it down or you've gotten it from the repo, let's preview this as well. Okay, cool. That's pretty much what we'd expect. Now our users need some place to type in their info, so let's go in and add the text inputs that we need for this name and account number. Back on sign-in screen, we're going to start using a new React Native component, and it's called the text input component. We'll add that to our imports, and then right here below my name and my account number, let's add in that component and give it some basic styling. Now while I'm adding this style, I just want to clarify what we're doing here. Text inputs by default come pretty unstyled, so it's really up to you to make it look as you want them to. That's why I'm adding border colors and a background color and specifying what I want the text to look like so that it looks appropriate for my particular application. One more thing I'm going to do on this second text input box is add keyboard type equals numeric. And what that does is that when we're using the app on the device, when we pop up the keyboard, it will be a numbers only keyboard instead of the typical keyboard. Makes it entry a little bit easier for an account number. Let's save that and preview what our changes look like. Looks pretty good. We can try typing in it. And that is perfect. Now with the basic screens in place with our app, we're ready in the next video to look at some more advanced techniques with the Navigator component that will allow us a little bit of flexibility and room to grow as we build larger and larger applications.